I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at this. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
What's up, the homies? Leighton here for UFC Gambling Addicts, back again for another UFC full card breakdown and predictions video. This one's going to be Adesanya versus Costa. We're going to be very split on this main event. I hope you guys enjoy all of these breakdowns and predictions. Catch you at the smoke break. First fight on this card, we have Khadis Ibrahimov versus Danilo Marquez, and we're going to start with the Russian fighter, Khadis. So Khadis comes into this fight 0 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. His back is absolutely against the wall in this fight. If we take a look at Ibrahimov's UFC career so far, we can see the weaknesses. His cardio wasn't anywhere near good enough against Jung and Ed Herman. He gets very crazy with his striking, which pretty much leaves him open to counter shots. Most recently embarrassed against Roman Dolidze, who had a very good debut against Khadis. The opponent, Marquez, comes into this fight 9 wins, 2 losses as a pro, making his UFC debut. Marquez seems to be primarily a grappler, a jiu-jitsu fighter. From the tape I've watched, I haven't been that impressed. He was slept by a huge overhand right. I can't remember the opponent's name, but man, it was wild. It was a huge overhand right that caught Marquez, and he just went straight to sleep like that. Looking at this matchup overall, it's clear to me that both of these fighters are at a similar level. Khadis has shown us weaknesses. Marquez, 34 years old, getting the opportunity to fight at the highest level. Khadis will most likely get crazy again with his striking. If he does, he could clip Marquez. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd expect Khadis to show us some improvements at least, whether it's energy management, striking defense, just something, some improvement in some area. Despite Marquez being a grappler, I think his best chance in this fight is actually to catch Khadis with a punch, potentially putting him out, or even taking his back for a submission if he can hurt the Russian fighter. I doubt any of us are confident in either side, but my pick is going to be the Russian fighter to get his first win in the UFC, and I'm actually going to take him via TKO in round number 2. I just don't really rate Marquez from the tape I've seen, and like I said, if the Russian fighter can show us some improvements in some areas, I would expect him to get his first win in this fight. Now my numbers would be, I'd keep him pretty close. I'd have Khadis come in -150, Marquez returning +130. And the actual odds for this fight are Khadis -150, Marquez +130. So it's spot on. Marquez doesn't look that impressive on tape. He's a grappler. Can't really see him getting much success with his grappling unless he clips Ibrahimov. Ibrahimov needs to show us something, right? I think he can work Marquez up against the fence, potentially even put him out with a similar punch that Marquez has already been put out by. I'll be interested to know who you guys are taking in this one. Let me know below. Alright homies, we have Jeff Hughes versus Juan Espino. And we're going to start with Jeff. So Jeff comes into this fight 0 wins, 2 losses, 1 no contest inside the UFC. Primarily a stand and bang type of fighter. The type of fighter that's purely looking to use his punching power. Training partner of Stipe Miocic, has been for some time now. So you'd like to assume that Jeff is becoming a better wrestler week by week. Jeff Hughes really hasn't shown us much at the moment. Didn't perform well against Pessoa in his last fight. Hasn't really performed well in any of his UFC fights to date. The opponent, Juan Espino, comes into this fight 9 wins, 1 loss as a pro, making his UFC debut. Espino is primarily a grappler, a jiu-jitsu fighter, 5 submission wins in his pro career. It's absolutely no secret what Juan is looking to do. As for his striking, we can't really say whether he needs work there or not, seeing as he's been able to fight all of his opponents in his world, which is grappling. Espino was able to drop Maurice Green before sinking in that rear naked choke, which was kind of surprising, to be fair. We have to give Espino credit for that. I do think this is a tough prediction to make. I'm sure a lot of people are going to overlook Jeff Hughes, seeing as he's not been up to scratch so far. But I will say this, Jeff Hughes has his back up against the wall in this fight, just like Ibrahimov. He has to perform in this fight. If he doesn't, chances are he's going to get cut. For Jeff to find success, he simply needs to stay off the mat. For Espino to find success, he simply needs to take Jeff to the mat. That's really the case of this fight, I believe. Espino could absolutely sub Jeff Hughes. But I think Jeff could absolutely shock a lot of people in his ability to stay upright in this fight. For me, I'm going to take Jeff Hughes with his back against the wall to have a good performance, land some heavy punches, and most importantly, stay on his feet. He has to stay on his feet in this fight, because if Espino is able to take him to the mat, is able to fatigue him in a grappling contest, without a doubt, there's no doubt in my mind, Espino will win this fight via submission. But if Jeff Hughes can show us, look, I'm training partners with Stipe Miocic, I have been wrestling, I have been improving, I know what I need to do to win this fight, and that's stay on my feet, I think he could win this fight. So my pick is going to be Jeff Hughes via decision. My odds would be Jeff Hughes -110, Espino -110. I really think a lot of people are going to overlook Jeff Hughes. And like I said, man, if Espino is able to take him to the mat, then rightfully so, people overlook Jeff Hughes rightfully. But if Jeff can, really perform when his back is against the wall, against a 39-year-old Juan Espino, who has been inactive, hasn't made his UFC debut yet, this is a very winnable fight for both guys. But I am leaning more towards the more active fighter in Jeff Hughes. So yeah, my numbers would be -110 each. And the actual numbers for this fight are, Jeff Hughes being massively overlooked here, +240. Espino coming back -300. That really tells me that a lot of people who are laying money on this fight think Juan Espino is going to go in there, take down Jeff Hughes and make easy work of him. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying Juan Espino by no means a Damian Maia, right? He isn't a Damian Maia. He's nearly 40 years old, inactive. Jeff Hughes is going to make it difficult. And I think if he stays upright, he can win this fight. William Knight versus Alexa Camur. And we're going to start with William. So William comes into this fight 8 wins, 1 loss as a pro, making his UFC debut. William Knight has fought on the Contender Series twice, got finishes in both of these fights. Just a few weeks ago, he fought on the Contender. The fight actually started quite badly for Williams too. He had his back taken on the mat in that back flattening position. He was able to hold on to the hands of his opponent to survive that position. He ended up smashing his opponent with some nasty elbows, which got him that TKO finish. William is a massive dude. He has that bodybuilding physique, which we all know isn't a great physique for fighting. The more muscle you have, the more oxygen your muscles require. The opponent, Alexa Camur, comes into this fight 1-0 inside the UFC. Also fought on the Contender Series too. If we're judging Camur off his UFC debut, we can't be too impressed, although we shouldn't be too disappointed either. There was definitely some positives, for sure some negatives too. For positives, I would say he competed well with the boxing, considering Justin Ledet is primarily a boxer. I would also say Camur done quite well when he was fatigued, but that would be the negative too. Camur uses a lot of explosive movements with his kicks and his circling of the octagon. Hopefully we can see a slightly improved gas tank or even improved ability in energy management. If you're asking me who's more likely to find a TKO stoppage in any round, I'd say William Knight. But if we find ourselves heading into round 2 and it gets 2 to 3 minutes inside round 2 and both guys are slowing down, I think Camur will look to put Knight up against the fence for some control time, look to land some knees, potentially even take down William Knight when both guys are tired. I don't want to count William Knight out too much because Camur is quite new in his MMA career too, so we don't really know how this one's going to play out. It's pretty much a contender series fight early on this card. For me, I'm siding with Alexa Camur purely because I think he can avoid those big knockout punches and edge out these rounds. You know, if both guys become very fatigued and Alexa Camur is still firing that rear teep, still going high with the high kicks, putting William Knight up against the fence, I think he's just going to slightly edge these rounds out. But I wouldn't be surprised, you know, if this was a split decision, William Knight got it based on a few punches being heavier, or even Camur getting it based on a takedown late in a round. This fight has a lot of unknowns to it, you know. William Knight has that physique, like I mentioned, where he will slow down. But Camur also showed us he doesn't hold back with his movements. You know, he likes to fire his kicks. His boxing is pretty good. His gas tank isn't the best. So, yeah, this fight has a lot of unknowns to it. It's basically a contender fight. But I am siding with Alexa Camur via decision. My numbers would be very close. I'd have Alexa Camur minus 125. William Knight coming in plus 105. Now, the actual odds for this fight are Alexa Camur getting some good respect, man. Minus 160. William Knight returning plus 140. So I would disagree with this line currently. I think William Knight has shown us, man, he's a dangerous guy, right? He can put you out at any given moment. Those elbows up against the fence most recently on the contender, nasty. They're nasty elbows. So Alexa Camur is going to have to fight with some caution in this fight, because if he doesn't, William Knight can put him out at any given moment. But like I said, if this fight gets 7 or 8 minutes in and both of these guys become very fatigued, I'd like to think that Camur has a little bit more to offer. Push Knight up against the fence, take him down, just be a little bit more active in that fatigued state. So my pick is going to be Alexa Camur. Let me know who you're taking below. Man, this is a good fight. Another tough prediction to make on this one. We have Shane Young versus Ludovic Klein, I believe is the pronunciation. And we're going to start with Shane. So Shane comes into this fight 2 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Training out of City Kickboxing, which is the camp of Israel Adesanya and many other top fighters on this card. Shane debuted against now champion Volkanovski. Although he lost that fight quite clearly, quite convincingly, he still went 15 minutes with the champion. Shane Young showed us good boxing pressure against Rolando D and Austin Arnett. Always stays on the opponent, uses that forward pressure very well, it must be said. The opponent, Ludovic Klein, comes into this fight 16 wins, 2 losses as a pro, making his UFC debut. Klein seems to be primarily a boxer, although this guy is not shy to kick you in the head. I've seen a few of his fights. He's a nasty kicker. That left kick will fly up to your temple within half a second, if that. I think both of these fighters are very good at what they do. Shane Young is a guy who he'll keep you on the back foot, look to impose his dominance with that boxing pressure, constant boxing pressure. The problem is though, Klein looks like he has more punching power. Definitely quick with his hands too. I think if Shane Young is to win this fight, he'll have to mix it up. Look to use some leg kicks, target that lead leg, takedowns up against the fence, and of course, use that boxing pressure like he always does. It's going to be one of those fights where we're all watching it thinking, man, Shane Young looks promising. And then within a blink of an eye, we're all thinking, wow, Shane Young can't take too many more of those punches from Klein. I really believe it will be one of those fights. Potentially a tough one to score. For me, I'm siding with the City kickboxing fighter. He's been off for over a year. Hopefully he has improved his wrestling, because I do think he'll need it in this fight. I am going to side with Shane Young via decision, but like I said, man, this newcomer, Klein, has a nasty high kick. His boxing is quick, it's powerful. It looks to be more powerful than Shane Young. So, man, once again, another tough prediction to make. And you can see this fight going either way. But I am going to side with Shane Young. My numbers, again, would be very close. Shane Young coming in minus 120. Klein coming back plus 100. That's really the fight I see, you know. Klein could put Young out, man. This guy is a big puncher. He's very quick. Good kicker. He looks like he's a hard guy to take down and keep down on the mat too. So, man, this is going to be one of those fights where you don't leave the room. You watch this fight. I think it's going to be very entertaining. But like I said, man, I am going to side with Shane Young minus 120. The actual odds are Shane Young minus 120. Klein coming back plus 100. Perfect line. I mean, a lot of money is going on Klein. A lot of money is going on Young. That's really the fight we have here. I'm sure you're going to see comments below. People taking Klein, people taking Young. You know, there's not really much to say other than how do you even know how this fight's going to go? For me, I want to side with the City kickboxing fighter, but absolutely, I can see how the opponent can win. Diego Sanchez versus Jake Matthews. And we're going to start with Diego. I'm not even going to check the record of Diego, but what do we say? We know what we say, right? Diego is a veteran's veteran, a legend of the game. He's seen it all. He can do it all. Fighting for many, many years. I am still pretty sad that he refused to fight Michelle after that knee. You never want to see such a legend of the game looking for a way out. But he did. It has to be said. Diego did not want to fight. I think that alone kind of gives us an insight into this fight. Diego should probably already be retired. The fact he didn't want to fight Michelle kind of tells us he knows he shouldn't be fighting. The opponent, Jake Matthews, comes into this fight 9 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. Primarily a grappler, a wrestler and jiu-jitsu fighter. Jake has brilliant, strong wrestling, brilliant, strong jiu-jitsu. There's absolutely no questioning Jake when it comes to the grappling side of his game. I think Jake has actually improved a lot as a striker too. You take a look at his fight against Rostam Akman. He was able to keep that in a kickboxing battle for the whole fight and had success there. More success than Rostam. Without a doubt though, Jake Matthews is at his best when he's taking the opponent to the mat. Diego Sanchez has never been submitted. To say Jake Matthews is going to be the first guy to do that, that's a huge statement to make. But it wouldn't shock me. I could see Jake using some nasty ground and pound and then snatching Diego's non-existent neck, or even maybe an armbar. But Diego Sanchez, man, he's got a lot of experience. He probably survives in most areas on the mat, in there with Jake Matthews. But I do see him being out-wrestled and beaten up on the mat in this fight. If this fight stays upright, again, I'm favouring Jake Matthews. Like I said earlier, I do think that Jake Matthews has improved as a striker. I wouldn't be surprised if he found that kill shot on the feet. All in all, I'm siding with the fighter that should still be fighting as opposed to the fighter that shouldn't be fighting. So my pick is going to be Jake Matthews via decision. My numbers would be, let's go Jake Matthews minus 420, Diego Sanchez plus 310. You know, I'm sure a lot of you guys would price Jake Matthews as a deep favourite. If we're going to find a price, let's make it a good one. Minus 420, Jake Matthews. Now, the actual odds are even deeper. I mean, we have Jake Matthews coming in minus 700, minus 750, which is getting a little bit silly. But at the same time, I mean, how does Diego win this fight? If it stays upright, I think Jake's going to win there. If it goes to the mat, I'm assuming that Jake Matthews is going to be the guy on top, looking to use his jiu-jitsu, bullying Diego on the mat. So yeah, really tough fight for Diego here. He's coming up against a guy who is improving fight by fight. Diego shouldn't be fighting anymore. For me, Jake Matthews most likely dominates this fight. Brad Riddell versus Alex de Silva. And we're going to start with Brad. So Brad comes into this fight 2-0 inside the UFC. Primarily a brilliant kickboxing fighter. Brad Riddell is up there with the likes of Chikadze when it comes to kicking. Transitioned into MMA and looks really good here too. Training out of City Kickboxing. I've been very impressed with Brad's UFC fights so far. Action-packed fights. Doesn't hold back at all. I love the way Riddell ends his combinations with those nasty low kicks. Really beautiful work. As for his grappling, by no means a grappler. But if we look at the evidence, he done well grappling with Jamie Malarkey. He also got his own takedown against a Russian grappler in Mustafayev. This is exactly what I mean by Brad Riddell looks good transitioning into MMA. The opponent, Alex de Silva, comes into this fight 1 win, 1 loss inside the UFC. I'm not sure if Alex is more of a striker or more of a grappler. Seems to be happy doing both. His record is quite padded. Having said that, I still think he's a fairly good fighter. I do believe he deserves to be fighting in the UFC. Against Yakovlev in his UFC debut, his IQ kinda let him down in that fight. I felt if he just kept to striking in that fight, he could have had a good time, but for some reason chose to jump to the mat with Yakovlev in that second round. Stylistically, I think this is a better matchup for Brad Riddell than it is Silva. Reasons for that are, if Brad Riddell keeps this fight strictly kickboxing, he can absolutely compete in that fight. Not just compete, but most likely dominate the kickboxing side of this fight. Now, if Silva chooses to grapple, I really think Brad Riddell can compete there. Definitely not dominate, but can compete. So for those reasons, I think Brad Riddell more than likely has a good performance over 15 minutes, is able to land effective, damaging combinations and notch up those points. So my pick is going to be with the City Kickboxing fighter again in Brad Riddell, and I'll take him via decision. My numbers would be Brad Riddell minus 200, Alex de Silva plus 165. And the actual odds are Brad Riddell coming in minus 320, minus 315, which is, he's getting a lot of respect there. Alex de Silva returning plus 250, plus 260. I can't really argue with it too much. Like I said, if this stays kickboxing, it really favours Brad Riddell to have a good performance. I think Alex de Silva really needs to turn up and compete in the kickboxing. If he does, that's fair enough. You know, he's going to have to mix in a few takedowns as well, and then maybe the fight can go his way. But Brad Riddell, man, on the feet, this guy is not going to hold back. He's going to land those effective, damaging combinations. And as for his grappling, like I said, this man took down the Russian fighter Mustafayev. So yeah, stylistically, I really like Brad Riddell for this fight. Let me know who you're taking below. Alright, homies. If you waited to smoke with me, amen. If you've been smoking this whole time, amen. If you're not a smoker, but you enjoy the smoke breaks, triple amen. As always, guys, I hope you're doing well. Every homie that's a part of the gang, I hope your health is all good, your mental's all good, you're pushing towards your goals every day, working towards that goal, you know. Hard work will always pay off, so whatever it is that you're working towards, keep doing it. I hope to speak to a few of you guys on Instagram today and tomorrow leading up to fight night. So for this smoke break, guys, I actually wanted to speak about gambling, and I know not everyone who is subscribed to the channel gambles, right? I've had comments before where a few of you guys have said, hey, I don't even gamble, man, but I like listening to your breakdowns and predictions every week. It's something I do before fight night. And I appreciate that. I really do. But for this smoke break, I wanted to speak a little bit about gambling. Spark back up there. So, I've decided, right, this gambling game, I love it. I love this gambling game. I really do. And I feel like I want to start to level up a little bit quicker, right? I've had some success. I have been successful with gambling in MMA. If you look at my topology account, I'm at 59.9% over the last nearly 4 years now, right? Predicting every single fight. I've decided, guys, I need to take a risk or two, right? Now, you don't have to take a risk to be successful and keep growing. You can stick to the normal strategy, which is, you know, whatever bankroll you have, you use 1 to 3% of that bankroll for any bet, right? 1% being the safest, 2% is pretty much what I do. Well, it's not even what I do because I go even less than 2% and 1%. But 1 to 3% of the bankroll is usually what you would place on a bet. I've decided, guys, that, you know, it's not going to be this week. It's not going to be next week. I don't know when it's going to be, but hopefully it's this year. I'm going to start placing some bigger bets like £200, £500, even 4 digits, right? Even going over 4 digits if I like the look of the bet. This isn't going to put me at any real disadvantage if I lose these bets. But if I win these bets, the ball is rolling even quicker now, right? And that's what I want to do, guys. So I wanted to let you guys know that I want to level up in this gambling game. And I don't know when, hopefully this year, like I said, but I am looking to increase these bets and look to change my life, basically. So amen to that. Like I said, man, a few of you guys don't gamble, and you may feel like this was a smoke break wasted, but I wanted to speak about that a little bit. So yeah, amen. I hope all of you guys have had a nice smoke break. Let's get into breaking down the rest of this main card. Hakeem Dawodu versus Zubaira. Man, this is a tough prediction to make. Let's start with the Canadian. So Hakeem comes into this fight 4 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Primarily a Muay Thai striker. Since losing his debut to Danny Henry in quite shocking fashion, Hakeem has gone on to prove his striking ability. Zubaira, without a doubt, a step up in competition for Hakeem. The kicking ability Hakeem has is by far the most dangerous part of his striking game. Seasoned, powerful kicker. The opponent, Zubaira, comes into this fight 4 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw inside the UFC. As most Russians are, Zubaira is primarily a grappler, combat sambo. Lerone Murphy was able to survive the grappling skills of Zubaira. However, Zubaira didn't even need to use his grappling skills in his most recent fight. He clipped Kevin Aguilar, and that was the start of the end. Zubaira showing us that he's more than just a wrestler. This matchup is a bit like Camur versus Knight, in the sense that there's some unknowns, right? The fact Lerone Murphy survived on the mat tells me Hakeem could replicate that. The fact Zubaira clipped Kevin Aguilar tells me he could replicate that. I'm not entirely sure how this fight's going to play out, but I am certain in saying this. Hakeem, in my opinion, is a much better striker, whether he gets clipped or not. Zubaira, a much better wrestler, whether he takes down Hakeem or not. This one really is personal preference. Would you rather side with the wrestler who clipped his opponent in his last fight, or the striker who will look to stay on his feet? For me, I'm siding with Hakeem. I like his kicking ability. He does well in close fights. and this is most likely going to be a close fight. My pick is going to be Hakeem Dawodu. I think he's going to stay upright more than often and win that striking battle. So my pick is Hakeem via decision. My odds would be literally -110 each, because that's how I see this fight going down. Both guys are going to have their moments. I think Zubaira probably will get a takedown, but I think Hakeem is going to land some damaging combinations on the feet too. Now the actual odds for this fight are Hakeem Dawodu coming in +100, Zubaira returning -115. So yeah, a lot of money going on both sides. You can't argue with it. Let me know who you're taking below. Ketlen Vieira versus Sijara Eubanks, and we're going to start with the Brazilian. So Ketlen comes into this fight 4 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. A black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a very experienced judo player, quite a well-rounded fighter for sure. However, we do have to acknowledge the fact that she was completely starched by Irene Aldana. Now I took Irene in this fight, but absolutely did not expect her to knock Ketlen into a new realm. It will be very interesting to see how Ketlen returns after such a bad knockout. Prior to that fight though, Ketlen looked very dangerous. She looked promising. And that's why it's going to be interesting to see how she returns. Sijara Eubanks comes into this fight 4 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. A boxer and wrestler inside the octagon. Also a very decent jiu-jitsu player too. Sarj is coming off a win over the Raging Panda just a few days ago. Her wrestling was the story of that fight. Despite slowing down, she was still able to get those takedowns. Stayed on top of Julia very well. Sarj really came out looking for a firefight with Julia. I think she could do the same thing here in this fight, seeing as Ketlen is coming off such a bad knockout loss. I've been very back and forth in this fight. A few days ago I was siding with the Brazilian, but I've changed my mind, guys. Eubanks is a dog-like fighter. She'll be up for the boxing contest in this fight. If this fight hits the mat, like I said, both ladies have very good jiu-jitsu, so in my opinion there's no real winner there. Momentum could be the deciding factor in this fight. Sarj has a lot of confidence coming off that win, whereas Ketlen is coming back to the octagon after being knocked out in such brutal fashion. Momentum is my deciding factor in this fight, but like I said, man, I've been very back and forth with this matchup. But I do believe if the boxing is close, man, this could be like a split decision type of fight. I'm siding with Sarj purely down to confidence and momentum. But man, I wouldn't be surprised if, 70% of you guys were taking Ketlen. But I'm going to side with Sarj. Her wrestling is very good. Her jiu-jitsu is very good. And like I said, she came out looking for a firefight with Julia Avila. So if she does that here and she ends up knocking Ketlen out, I wouldn't be too shocked. So I am going to side with Sijara Eubanks via decision. My odds would be very close. I mean, Eubanks -110, Ketlen -110 is exactly how I see this fight. The real odds at the moment are Ketlen coming in -170, Sijara Eubanks returning +150. So yeah, a little bit more money going on the Brazilian. It's understandable. Prior to that knockout loss, she looked very dangerous, right? She's a big girl with big punching power, but Sijara Eubanks, man, good boxing, good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu, coming off a big win, has a lot of confidence. So that is going to be my deciding factor in this fight. I'm happy to play the plus money there. Let me know who you're taking below. We have Kai Kara France versus Brandon Royval, and we're going to start with Kai. So Kai comes into this fight 4 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Primarily a striker, training out of City Kickboxing. Kai has fought against mainly grapplers. The only time I've seen Kai Kara outclassed by the opponent was against Brandon Moreno, but there's no shame there. Moreno was a man possessed. Kai has big punching power, good combinations, an underrated wrestling game too, in my opinion. I remember him dumping De La Rosa a few times just to make a statement. The opponent, Brandon Royval, comes into this fight 1-0 inside the UFC. Debuted against the savvy veteran, Tim Elliott. He was able to find a submission in that fight. Brandon is primarily a jiu-jitsu fighter. Arm bars, triangles, he doesn't mind which one. He's going to search for that submission. Now, I highlighted earlier that Kei Kara has fought against mainly grapplers. I made that point because I think that plays into this fight. Kai has experience already in this type of matchup. Could Brandon take down Kai and find that submission? Maybe. Maybe he can. But there's a very, very good chance that Kei Kara is able to stay on his feet and pretty much fight his fight, which is using good kickboxing pressure, that city kickboxing way. I haven't gone against Kei Kara yet. This isn't going to be the spot that I do so. Kai has more experience, better striking, arguably better wrestling too. So my pick has to be Kei Kara via decision. Like I said, man, I just rate Kei Kara. He's a good puncher, good power, kickboxing, wrestling. He looks to be getting better every fight too. My odds would be Kei Kara coming in minus 195, Brandon Royval returning plus 170. And the actual odds are Kei Kara coming in minus 250, Brandon Royval returning plus 200. Yeah, okay, so the only concern I would have in this fight is Kai kind of slows down a little bit outside of round one. And if he does slow down and Brandon Royval is the guy that's able to take him down and take his back, then it could get a little sweaty. But like I said, Kai has so much experience fighting grapplers already in the UFC. I would expect him to stay on his feet, even get his own takedown if he wants it. But I wouldn't see why he would want to do that, you know, because now you're giving Brandon Royval a chance to search for those triangles and arm bars off his back. But my pick is going to be Kei Kara via decision. Oh boy, co-main event. Oh boy. Okay, we have Dominic Reyes versus Jan Blachowicz, and we're going to start with Dom. So Dominic comes into this fight 6 wins, 1 loss inside the UFC. Primarily a striker. A very good wrestler too. Reyes is coming off a loss to John Jones. Now I took Reyes in this fight. I don't want to say he won. I don't want to say he lost either. What I will say is he showed a lot of people how high level he really is. A sniper of a left hand, a huge left kick. That left kick of his is a dangerous weapon. Reyes is one of the best at getting back to his feet when up against the fence too. This guy is just a very, very well-rounded 205er. The opponent, Jan Blachowicz, comes into this fight 9 wins, 5 losses inside the UFC. A black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, a powerful, nasty striker too. I feel like Jan was overlooked for many years, now starting to prove why he's at the top, just like Dom Reyes. As Jan would say, he's got that Polish power. You can't say he hasn't, right? Looking at what he did to Rockhold and Corey Anderson, this guy's a nasty striker, man. Despite picking Reyes against John Jones, I'm not too confident that Reyes can win this fight. Now, I'm not saying I'm picking Jan, because I'm not. My pick will be Reyes. But I just want to mention that the mental side of fighting is huge. I think I say this nearly every week, but it's true, right? The mental side of fighting is very, very important. The fact Reyes is still talking about the performance against John tells me his mind isn't exactly all focused on becoming the champion. He's acting like he already is the champion, which could really backfire in this fight. Coming up against a guy who he's been here for quite a few years, a guy that's been climbing the mountain, right, in Jan Blachowicz. Listen, my pick is going to be Dom Reyes. I think he can outscore Jan. Stay away from that power. But do not be shocked, man. Do not be shocked if Jan Blachowicz can get this done. He has nasty hands. He's a good kicker himself. Very good jiu-jitsu. Powerful in the clinch. But for me, if Dom Reyes can just use what he's been doing, right? The left hand, the left kick, dictate that range, I think he can beat Jan Blachowicz. So my pick is going to be Dom Reyes via decision. My odds would be minus 150 Dom Reyes, plus 130 Jan Blachowicz. And the actual odds for this fight are Jan Blachowicz plus 250, Dom Reyes minus 300. I've got to disagree. That line kind of reminds me of when Alexander Gustafsson had that good performance against John Jones, and now he's getting these crazy prices where we're all looking at it like, well, if he done that well against John, he can beat everyone that isn't John, right? And that's not how it works. Jan Blachowicz has a lot of power in his hands. He only has to get close to Dom Reyes, keep it in the pocket to end this fight. Dom Reyes needs to, like I said, be doing everything that's got him to this point. Use that left hand, use the left body kick, and be a dictator of that range, right? In my opinion, the line is off though. Alright homies, Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. And before I get into this breakdown, I've just got to say a couple things. The money we made last week was beautiful. I really pray that we can make the same money this week. The only problem I had last week was literally what Leonardo DiCaprio would say on The Wolf of Wall Street. The only problem you're going to have is that you didn't invest more. And that's literally how I feel. Make sure you Hamzat smash all of the like buttons on these breakdowns. And let's get into breaking down this main event. Let's start with Israel Adesanya. So Israel comes into this fight 8-0 inside the UFC. The champion of the 185 division. Player one, as he would describe himself. Adesanya is a world-class striker. A master of range management, just like Conor McGregor. Adesanya is so good at what he does. A mix of John Jones and Anderson Silva put together. Adesanya took up dancing, for those of you that don't know. Some of you may think, what does dancing have to do with fighting? It has a lot to do with it. Fighting is literally human chess, right? And Adesanya is one of the very best at playing human chess. The opponent, Paulo Costa, comes into this fight 5-0 inside the UFC, primarily a knockout artist. Costa is purely looking to knock you dead. He seems to have very good success with that game plan too. If he can't knock you out, the body kicks, the hooks to the body, they're very nasty, right? Seems to work a lot for Costa, especially against Yoel Romero. Both of these fighters are coming off a win to Romero. Both of these fights are very different fights. Costa embraced the fact that he was going to get hit from Romero. He also embraced the fact that he would land big punches himself. Adesanya embraced the fact that he wouldn't get hit from Romero. Now, he still did take a couple of clean punches, which he ate well, but the difference in performance were huge. Adesanya avoided the power, he danced with Romero, played a very defensive game. Costa was up for a war. Now this fight I believe is something similar. Adesanya will look to dance, Costa will look for a war. Both of these guys can win. For Costa, he can be losing 10, 20 minutes of the fight and connect with Adesanya and that's it, it's over. Or Adesanya could literally avoid the power and have a masterclass performance in there. I've never picked against Adesanya. I've picked against Costa once. My prediction in this fight is Israel Adesanya retains his title. Could Costa be the first? He could. He absolutely could. But I'd rather take the guy that I feel has more to offer than just throwing heavy bombs. So my prediction's going to be Israel Adesanya via decision. And my odds would be Israel minus 200, Costa plus 160. And the actual odds are Israel Adesanya minus 170, minus 175. Paulo Costa coming back plus 150. So I would actually price Adesanya a little bit more of a favourite than what he is. But at the same time, I completely understand, right? Paulo Costa can take damage, right? And if he can take the damage, he's always in the fight. It doesn't matter if he's 10 minutes down, 15 minutes down. Just one clean connection could be it. So Israel Adesanya needs to be on his game at all times. He needs to be avoiding that power, dancing with Costa, looking to take this fight into deep waters. But even then, 4th round, 5th round, Paulo Costa could pull it out the bag, right? The last thing to go is the power. And that's why I predict Adesanya via decision rather than a finish. I'm sure we're going to be split on this fight, guys. anything could happen, right? Let me know who you're taking below. And if you want to catch me outside of YouTube, we can do that at Instagram at UFC Late. Alright guys, peace.